Good evening. Good
Good
evening,
evening, sir.
Shiba.
How are you? How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
So,
Yeah.
Balaganpati sir is right here with us. And before starting anything and listening to his precious insights, I would just like to introduce you who sir is and what work he's doing in a very short, kind of precise notice, because sir is working extensively in very many areas and which I'm not able to tell you. He himself will tell you. So, Professor Balaganpati is presently heading the Department of Philosophy at the University of Delhi. He is one among the few Indians who is certified philosophical counselor and by American philosophy practitioner. He's a trained in philosophical counseling, and he's a counselor, philosophical counselor. He's presently working on a project titled Yoga Consciousness in Mahabharata, and he is a member of Project Committee of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. He is also Chancellor's nominee in the Board of Directors for MLSU, that is Mohanlal Sakharia University, Udaipur, and he is a chairman of governing body at Maitri College, New Delhi. Presently, as I told you, he is heading Department of Philosophy in New Delhi, that is Delhi University. So I welcome you, sir, amidst us. All our viewers are very happy and glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shiba. And firstly, I should appreciate you for this wonderful initiative that you have taken up, because
Thank
in
you,
these
sir.
uncertain times of COVID-19 pandemic, definitely there is a requirement of psychologists and philosophers to come forward and address the issues of the people, no issues which concern the people at the present situation. The factuality is to be addressed, and in this
Definitely,
regard,
sir.
I definitely appreciate your wonderful initiative, and this would go a long way, I believe. And thank you very much for this wonderful invitation as well. And I'm so happy to be with you here and talk to the viewers who would be joining us and who have already joined us. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir.
Yeah.
So, going and taking our talk session forward, I would, as I told you all, that we are talking today about philosophical research, counseling. Well, this is a very new term. When I heard it for the first time, I was like, what is it? I mean, I've always heard about psychological counseling, I've always heard about therapies, but what is all about philosophical counseling? And as all of you know, that we have very little knowledge about what is philosophy. Since I'm learning in bits and pieces what is philosophy, I would like all my viewers to come in face to face, very learned person like Professor Balaganpati, who is right here with us. So, sir, before anything, I would just like to ask a basic question. What is philosophy?
Yeah, thank you so much. Basically, I understand that the audience or general audience, which means they are not specialized, all of them may not be specialized in philosophy. And that is how the question of addressing what is philosophy is most relevant to begin the discussion. And yeah, if I have to say something on this philosophy, basically we have to understand, many of us think that what is this philosophy? And I don't really get into it when people say I'm doing philosophy. Even I ask my own first year students, what
Yeah,
did you think philosophy is when you took up philosophy, right? The reason, one of the major concerns that I have and I have been arguing for is unfortunately, philosophy is not in public epistemologies anymore. It was there some time back, it was there previously, but presently, philosophy, the term philosophy itself, is not there in the public epistemologies, which is quite unfortunate to all of us. And this is
right.
because of, even if it is there in public epistemologies to some extent, 25 or 30%, even in these spaces, it is completely misrepresented. It's completely
Right.
represented in a wrong way. For example, if somebody says I'm a philosopher, you would assume that probably he is something related to religious kind of one, right? But
Definitely,
actually,
definitely.
philosophy is not completely related to religion. We have a branch of philosophy called philosophy of religion, where we talk about religion, but not in the sense, in the way religious people do it, right? We
Right.
philosophize religion as one of the aspects of human life and try to address it. And another kind of misconception that we come forward with regard to philosophy is completely otherworldly. If we say he is a philosopher, you would think that he is nowhere related to this world,
Yes.
and he's into some other world completely. But actually, that is also a mistaken view to your notice, all of your notice. These two are utterly wrong-footed conceptions that we have, and otherwise, in the remaining space, there is no philosophy at all. This
Yeah.
is largely because this is also largely because of limiting philosophy to academia. Okay,
Yes.
sometime
Very
back,
true.
philosophy was a community endeavor. Okay, there was
Right.
a community philosophizing in India and even in Greek societies. There was a community philosophizing, but unfortunately now community philosophizing is doesn't exist, and basically it is limited and restricted itself to academic philosophy. That's why we think that it is nowhere related to any of us, to the empirical human life concerns, as biology or psychology seem to be rooted in.
Yes.
But if I have to talk something more about how do we understand philosophy, for example, let me explain it this way. We all know, we talk about biology, for example, and what is
Yes.
it a student of biology would get? He would get the knowledge of biological organism, and similarly, a student of zoology would get knowledge of animal kingdom, right? So, in a student of computer science would get software and hardware knowledge, right?
Definitely.
In all these spheres, we are talking about all these branches of knowledge try to provide knowledge of something else, right?
Yes.
Whether it is a biological organism or animals or whatever. But actually, philosophy tries to address the fundamental core issue of what this knowledge is,
Yes.
right? See, all these branches of knowledge believe or assume that there is something called knowledge and go forward. And philosophy tries
Yes.
to address the core issue of what this knowledge is all about and how do we get this knowledge. These are two very foundational branches of philosophy: metaphysics and epistemology. And if I
Yes.
tell you that if I use this jargon like epistemology, metaphysics, etc., ontology, then it takes things away from you. It appears as
Yes.
though you're taking things away from you.
Far-fetched.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
I say basically it talks about knowledge and how do you get knowledge, it's so close to each one of us, right? So
Yes.
that's where philosophy tries to address the issues. And to just explain it further, philosophy, most of the people think that it is somewhere in the air and it's nowhere related to empirical life situations. But I believe that it is within each individual. Philosophy lies within each individual. That's how we say every one of us at one point of time or the other is a philosopher, right? We say
Yes.
that is his philosophy, right? Most of the times we use this expression that it's his philosophy. What do we mean by
Yes.
that? No, what we mean by that is, let me explain it through an example, wonderful example. That, say, for example, if I'm giving you a pen, okay, or if
Yeah.
I'm giving you an idol of Lord Buddha, you would pick it up with your hand, right?
Yeah.
And through by which hand you pick it up, this idol of Buddha is dependent on your belief system.
Yes.
Okay,
Some
whether
say
you
right
pick,
hand is.
yeah,
Yeah.
whether you pick it up with right hand or left hand is based on your belief system.
Right. Very
And
true, sir.
yeah, and this belief system, how did this belief system has built a worldview in your mind? Okay, which means what I'm trying to say is all your actions in the world sometimes seems to be conscious or unconscious or whatever it may be. All these actions are largely dependent on your worldview and your belief
Very true.
system. And how did this belief system get developed? Through your brought up. Okay, while your younger days, when you are developing your own during your formative days, you're exposed to your family, you're exposed to your school, you're exposed to your society. These three things largely influence your belief system, and that is how your activities in the world are largely dependent on your belief system, and the belief system is dependent on your brought up.
Brought
Okay,
up.
so yeah, how do you get this belief system? That is epistemology. How do you get this knowledge? How did you develop your belief system and worldview, and your worldview is the one which makes you react and act in the world. Which means, where is philosophy? Philosophy is very much in you. The very every act of you is filled with
Is
philosophy.
philosophy.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we think that philosophy is not within us, it is somewhere else, and it has no way related to empirical life. But actually, every act of you tells you that you are a philosopher to some extent.
Yes.
So that is how I try to I thought I should inform all our friends here that philosophy is very much rooted in the empirical reality in which we are very much living, and that is how it has its relevance, which is to be
Exactly.
understood again and again. Unfortunately, we think that it is only limited to academia, and it is limited to only armchair philosophizing, and it is no way related to the world, but it is far away from the truth. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
So
So
I hope I
that's
have
what.
explained. Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's beautiful, and like many of my viewers right now watching me, and especially people associated with psychology, must be wondering, ma'am has brought philosophy on a platform of psychology. I would really like to tell you guys that philosophy is kind of wisdom. When we talk about wisdom, we talk about philosophy, and wisdom is the knowledge of everything. So very well, sir has wrapped up that. When we study different subjects, yes, every other knowledge that we do, every other knowledge that we study is existing, is a kind of a philosophy. We are wrapped up, we are built up through different philosophies, through our belief systems, through our brought up, and through the cognitive beliefs and thoughts we are shaped in. So thank you so much, sir. Going ahead, I would like to ask you, sir, this is a very new topic, philosophical counseling, which has recently come up in the kind of papers and journals, and people started hearing about it, people started talking about it, and many philosophers I've heard are talking about philosophical counseling. So I would like to ask you, what does this term philosophical counseling literally, it has a literal meaning, what does it mean, and how is it different from psychological counseling?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for this very important question, because many people have doubts regarding this. And also, when people hear the word philosophical counseling, very immediate kind of thing that comes to the mind is, how is it different from psychological counseling? Here, let me prepare my ground to whatever I'm going to say next
Yeah,
on
sure.
philosophical counseling. As all of us know, most of us at least know, philosophy and psychology were not different some time back. Okay, psychology was very much a part of philosophy, and
Yeah.
the epistemological ground that we discuss in philosophy, from that, psychology has branched off because of its empirical inclinations. Okay,
Definitely.
when it tried to get into the empirical world and look at the statistical and empirical and experimental orientations, that is how psychology has branched off from philosophy. Otherwise, it was very much a part of philosophy. That is how even now we find many of the themes and topics which are common to both. Only the
Both.
perspectives seem to be different, but
Different.
otherwise we discuss mind, we discuss consciousness, we discuss
Yes.
memory, right? All these as
Emotional
perception,
intelligence.
cognition, emotion, all these aspects are common. In fact, let me tell you this: Indian psychology is largely Indian philosophy. You cannot differentiate what
Yes.
is Indian psychology and
Yes.
Indian
So true. So true.
philosophy. At least
Yes.
in the West, because of its empirical orientations, it could develop its empirical branch in a systematic way. But when it comes to India, you don't really find any difference between these two.
Yeah.
So, having said that, I have my own understanding. Let me clarify my own understanding of this. I personally believe that all branches of knowledge, because of our orientation towards some form of specialization, have branched off and became independent. And that is how each branch of knowledge is unique, uniquely different, and also yet uniquely limited as well. Okay, every branch of knowledge is unique, and it is also limited in its own
Yes.
perspective. So when we understand this limitation of each one of these branches of knowledge, there is there is a requirement for integration of all forms of knowledge, and that is where philosophy is considered to be mother of all knowledge, in the sense that every attempt to know something is understood to be philosophy, philosophizing. Okay, that is
Yes.
how if you go to ancient Greek times, every form of knowing, an attempt that you make to know, is understood to be philosophy. So you don't have chemistry or physics or psychology there. It is all philosophizing.
Philosophy.
That is how even in the present times, your highest degree, academic degree, is called to be said to be PhD,
Philosophy.
and
Yes.
PhD is doctorate in philosophy. Even
Philosophy.
if you do it in chemistry,
I used to
they would
wonder
say,
that, yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah,
would
why
say,
philosophy of psychology? Yeah.
yeah, your doctorate is always doctorate in doctorate in philosophy,
Philosophy.
doctorate of philosophy, right? That is how the highest degree is still called PhD.
Yes.
So
I think your selfie mode is gone on the camera mode. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
It's
So
possible.
having said that, once we understand that each discipline is limited in its own way, we would also understand that there should be there should be a holistic understanding of the knowledge, and that is where even philosophy is limited in its own perspective. Probably psychology is also limited in its own perspective, but philosophy is unique because of its own perspective, and psychology is unique because of its
Definitely.
own perspective. And
Definitely.
there are certain concerns that only psychology can address. There are certain concerns that only probably philosophy can address.
Philosophy can
And
address.
when I'm saying this, I'm not saying that these are watertight compartments. There is some kind of fluidity at the borders, which makes them
Yes.
come together and try to integrate with each other, and try to provide a holistic conception of knowledge. And this is what we have to understand. For example, psychology definitely talks about behavioral aspect of the
Yeah.
individuals, right?
Yeah.
And if that is the case, philosophy also talks about behavioral aspects, but probably it will talk in terms of normativity, morality, but psychology will not
Yes.
talk about normativity or morality, right?
Of
So
course.
it keeps that aspect away from it because of its empirical orientations. But philosophy would talk in terms of morality as well. No? That is
Yeah.
how these two are to be understood to be complementary to each other. No? That's the most important one. Having said that, this is what I thought I should clear the ground before I go further into philosophical counseling. Now, what is this philosophical counseling is all about? Uh, I basically believe that each one of us, as individual human beings, face, if I say, all of us want to be a good life, right? All of us want to have a good life, right? And none of us would deny this. And all of us
Definitely.
would definitely desire a happy life as well. No disagreement would be there on this. And all of us also, at some point of the time or the other, would feel like we should have a right kind of life, and probably there would be less disagreement on this as well. Okay, but the question comes when we are very certain that we want to have a good life, we want to have a happy life, we want to have right kind of life, at least the right in our own conception, right? When we want to have that, when if you probe such kind of things, answers further by saying, what do you mean by good life? Then you would think that, yeah, I have to think.
Yes.
When I ask you, do you want to have a good life? You would definitely immediately say, yes, I want good life.
Yes.
And when I ask you, what do you mean by good life? Then you would start thinking, what, probably, yeah, I have to think. And in the similar way, if I ask you what is happy life, then also you would get back, you would think that, yeah, I should reflect further so that I can give an answer. And similarly about right kind of life, because you will not know what is right kind of life, you would be thinking, it requires
Yes.
certain amount of reflection, only then you can reach
Yes.
out to give an answer. And
Yeah.
the problem accentuates when I ask you about a life which according to you is good, happy, and right
And
kind.
right.
Okay, when we desire all these three to be in our life, okay, then which means you have to look at the intersection of all these three areas: good, happy, and right kind of life. And if somebody asks you, since you desire all these three, now let me know what is that.
Yeah.
It's always a confusing thing. That is where philosophy comes into picture. That's where philosophy tries to guide us. Okay, it's not that it provides an answer to each one of us, saying that this is the kind of right kind of life, or this is the kind of happy kind of life, this is the kind of good kind of life. But it helps you to reach out what is good life according to you. It helps you to reach out what is happy life according to you. It helps you to reach out what should be or what would be right kind of life for you. That is how philosophy helps us, and philosophical counseling basically would be rooted in this kind of an exercise. All of us would agree that not all concerns of human life can be reduced to biological or physical ailments, right? Not all our concerns or concerns of human life can be reduced to biological or physical ailments. When you think that I'm not feeling well, it doesn't mean that you have a biological illness, right?
Yeah.
It cannot be reduced to physical illness, right? In the
Yeah.
similar way, when you say, okay, I'm not feeling well, it doesn't mean that you can reduce it to a psychological ailment, right?
Definitely.
So far we are only certain, we think that we are only certain about the physical or biological realm as well as psychological realm. But probably there is, beyond that, there is another kind of realm which you may call cosmic, or which you may call spiritual, okay, which I would call philosophical, right? A
Okay.
realm which needs to be explored, though it exists within us. Okay, though
Yeah.
we get concerns about such kind of issues,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we are not aware where to locate them. Okay,
Definitely.
so that's where I say each one of us
Philosophical
at
counseling comes in.
yeah, each one of us at some point of the time or the other may face a difficult situation where it's like life becomes meaningless, and life doesn't seem to be of any value to you at all. And then some of us can come out of that on our own, and some of us
Definitely.
will take the help of others and come out of that kind of a situation. And unfortunately, those who cannot get any help end their lives, unfortunately. So it is not that once you face such kind of a situation, you will not face such kind of situation anywhere in your lifetime later on. This kind of thing recurs in our lives. You might have faced it, I also have faced it, and I may face it tomorrow. So this is
Yes.
where you definitely require a helping philosophical counselor. So when we say philosophical counselor, um, yeah, basically, we intend that the client has to be rational, functional, as well as not complete, not a person of mental illness. Okay, which means for philosophical counseling, a person has to come on his own.
Own.
He has to opt for it. Only then it is
Yes.
possible, right? Because you when you are doing the counseling, philosophical counseling, you are helping the person. You are not trying to judge the person. You are only helping the person to come out with a solution on his own. Okay, it is only a kind of a dialogue, a discussion that a space that you provide for a dialogue and discussion, where talking to a philosopher would definitely resolve certain kind of concerns that you have with regard to your own life and life at the larger in the larger framework. And that is where philosophical counselor would be very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you were
So,
saying something, and I
yeah, I was just
please.
since we were talking about it, and viewers might be curious to know about it. Like I am curious to know about it. How about like since we say that, you, as you told right now, that philosophical counseling is basically when the person consciously comes to you and, will speak up about his problem, or maybe some issues which he or she is going through. But at that point of time, he requires some kind of little effort, little consciousness, that he wants to come. So that initiative that wants to come requires a little bit of psychological counseling, which we say that, we need to have empathy, we need to have non-judgmental environment, we need to have unconditional positive regard. So what we say that if we is it an integration of a psychological and philosophical counseling, which actually one can practice if one is, uh, if one is a psychological counselor and can also be trained into philosophical counseling, will it be like a kind of a boost or a boon to the society, because he or she can, integrate both of that and use it for the betterment, because he can see both the perspectives. What do you have to say about that? I know I've just sprung up in the between, but since it just came to my mind.
Yeah, yeah, great, great. Thank you so much. No, this helps me to clarify certain other things as well. Yeah, I basically believe that, yeah, if I have to slightly deviate and come back to this particular aspect that you have mentioned, for example, in United States of America, philosophical counseling has developed as a branch, as a very important aspect of practice of philosophy, and uh, there are two different schools that have emerged. Okay, one
Okay.
school argues that philosophy has to be or philosophy has to go with positive psychology, and the other
Right.
group which argues that philosophy can emerge, philosophical practice or philosophical counseling can be on its own. Okay,
Own.
so one is called American Practitioner Philosophy Practitioners Association, and another one is National Philosophy Counselors Association or something. Okay,
Okay.
NCPA. So these two branches have come out that way. So I
Yeah.
also personally believe that instead of see, philosophical counseling has been in practice in various countries since long.
Yeah.
Though it is a relatively new discipline, philosophical counseling is a new discipline compared to psychological
Yeah.
counseling in its empirical orientations at least. Otherwise, if you look at the history, the Socrates said to have
Yeah.
practiced philosophy, and what Socrates has done is philosophical counseling. But otherwise, as a modern
Right.
discipline, it originated with a German philosopher by name Achenbach coming out and trying to practice philosophy. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I personally believe that psychological counseling and philosophical counseling probably have to go hand in hand, taking the inputs from each other. That's where I said these are complementary. These two are complementary. Okay.
Right.
If we look at them as antagonistic to each other, or one trying to usurp the possibilities of the other or
Yeah.
purview of the other, this is all. This doesn't land us up in any fruitful kind of endeavor.
Yeah.
But what is required is, instead of reinventing the wheel, we can follow, we can look at the kind of development that has come up in philosophical counseling in the West, taking psychology along with it, and then we can develop our own conception of philosophical counseling. And that is where I believe psychological counseling and philosophical counseling have to go together. And even in psychological counseling, if you look at it at the theoretical abstract level, most of the theories that are used belong to
Are same.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is how they are always together. Only some of the researchers would unfortunately
Disagree
interpret it
or
in a limited
counter
no
it.
in,
Yeah.
interpret it in a limited way. So that is how
Okay.
they think that it is. They are opposite to each other. But otherwise, I completely agree with you on the point that we have to take the inputs from both have to take the inputs from each other and try
Yes.
to grow further. Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
sir. So, sir, going ahead, I would like to ask you, since we are, dealing with the topic that how philosophical counseling can help in mental health. So, we are, though I have a different question concerning the present condition of COVID-19, but on a general level, I would be asking you that how philosophical counseling can be really effective and a contributor in improving the mental health in India?
Yeah, great. This is a very interesting question. Actually, when I saw the theme that you have given me, mental health and
Yeah.
philosophical counseling in relation to mental health,
Yes, sir.
I thought definitely this is a major concern where most of the viewers would be interested to like get into. Basically, yeah, mental. When we talk about mental health, let me just try to map what do we mean by this mental health. Okay,
Yeah.
what do we mean by mental health? We are saying that there is a kind of healthy condition that is related to mind. Is it only limited to empirically established psychological ailments? Do you do we think that
Of course
mental
not,
health
sir.
is limited to empirically established psychological ailments? No,
No.
definitely not. Right? There is. We always believe that. We always feel. In other words, in philosophy, we say this. I say it in my classes as well. That all knowledge is a process from known to the unknown. So all our
Definitely.
journey in the knowledge is a process from known to the unknown. We always continuously strive to know the unknown, right? So
Definitely.
in that sense, mind is not limited only to the way the experimental psychology tries to understand, and it has a lot to offer to us. And even experimental psychology has to go a long way in understanding the conceptions of
Yeah.
mind. Having said that, this is only a cautionary statement. I am not trying to point out
Yeah, it's
any
only about, I think, since you are telling
mind.
about experimental psychology, because there are different schools of psychology and they practice
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
I remember listening to Seligman's positive psychology, one of
Positive
his
psychology.
talks, positive
Yeah.
psychology. He
Yeah.
says, yeah, I have worked on it for a long time, and I feel quite happy that whatever I have done so far, whatever discoveries that we have made with regard to mental health, etc. But he says, at the end, he says, yeah, I feel sorry that we have left out a big area of concern, which is looking at what is right about human mental health, right?
Yes.
So that's where the concern for well-being comes into picture. Okay, that's
Yeah.
where the concern for well-being comes into picture. But otherwise, specifically, since you asked me, how does philosophical counseling come into the area of mental health?
Mental
I would
health.
say, yeah, I would say the ethical concerns that each one of us may land up because of
Yeah.
various aspects of life. This is one of the aspects of mind dependent also. Okay, so the
Mhm.
ethical concerns and also epistemological concerns, which is how do you sorry we
Am I audible, sir?
yeah, now you are audible. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I was trying to say that even the ethical concerns that each one of us have may get into ethical dilemmas, and also epistemological problems that we come across are largely mind dependent, and mind has a bigger role to play in resolving them. And also the areas where we talk about worldviews that I spoke about, worldview orientations and reorientations that are required. Most of us may have a different kind of worldview, which we have to reorient ourselves with. And this is also a kind of mind dependent one. And most importantly, the conceptions of meaning and value and purpose of life, right? Which is the major concern of existentialist approach to philosophical counseling is also related to mental health.
Fine.
Okay, we
Mental
cannot
health.
differentiate. Yeah, we cannot completely do away with this kind of things. But otherwise, what happens in philosophical counseling when we talk about it is, say, for example, if we are going to talk about the methods that are existent,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
always a major concern. I think, yeah, you're going forward with another question. Can I?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, sir, I just want to continue this that we are talking about, as you told us, how is it linked, and it's not only that when we talk about mental health, and that's what psychology also, expands and is trying to aware people. I have taken an initiative and stepping up and telling people that mental health doesn't mean that only illness, mental illness or something like that. There are a lot more to mental health. That is everything that we go to, go from one end to the other end in human behavior. Everything is included in that, and it is very important. So, continuing forward with philosophical counseling, I would like to ask you, is this kind of a therapy? Is this an intervention? Is it a technique? Or how do you see? I mean, is it a method, a particular method to, address daily issues or day-to-day life? A person questions himself. Then, is it a method or is it a technique? What do you say about it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting aspect actually. As I mentioned, philosophical counseling is relatively a new discipline. It is an emerging area. Um, as a discipline, it is a new one, but as a practice, it is not new. It is as old as Socrates. But otherwise, and also in the Indian conception, like as old as Mahabharata or even Puranic tradition. But otherwise, having said that, philosophical counseling is understood to be of two-way kind of one. Okay, one is problem solving, the other one is process oriented. Okay, in problem solving, the client may have a concern. Okay, which would be addressed, which can be of a certain kind of an issue that he is troubled with, which needs a solution. Okay, this is
That
a
is
very
solution
important aspect
oriented.
of human life, and not all problems that individual faces or of either psychological or of biological in nature. Okay, there are
Right.
certain concerns that are oriented to philosophy alone. Okay,
True.
that is where problem solving is very important, and within problem solving are the issues that I have mentioned, like ethical dilemmas and logical dilemmas come into picture. But there is
Yes.
another important distinction aspect of philosophical counseling, which is called process-oriented one, where the individual comes forward and says, "I am like this, but I want to improve further. I want to go further, and I don't know how to go further." Because
Right.
in human life, what happens is, somebody told me some time back, even if you see a closed door completely, if you imagine yourself to be in a cave, and if you think
Yeah.
that it is all closed on all sides,
Sides.
uh, all sides, all there is no possibility at all that you see of an opening. But even then, you work hard, you would get an opening there. Okay, so but unfortunately, since you stand from your own standpoint and try to look at it, you may not find the location. So that's how you have to shift your position so that you can see a way out. So that is how most of the times you think that you are stuck up somewhere and you're
Yeah.
not able to come out of that, right? This is an existential situation in which you seem to be thinking that's stranded, but actually
Yeah.
there are ways of coming out of it that requires slight shifting of your own orientation, and that's what is called process philosophy, which scholars like Ran Lahav from USA, and he offers something called deep philosophy classes. Okay, deep
Okay.
philosophy course, where he tries to precisely address this aspect. And also, there is one professor, Lou Marinoff, who is the director of American Philosophy Practitioners Association. He also offers a similar kind of philosophical counseling. And there are many other scholars who have been continuously contributing to enhancing or adding the new methodologies and new orientation to philosophical counseling. But unfortunately, from Indian front, there is less work that was done. Okay, so that's where we see a lot of potentiality in developing Indian perspective of philosophical counseling. Though almost 25 years back, an organization which is oriented to philosophical counseling was established in Jaipur. Okay, in
Oh,
Jaipur.
yeah, I read
Uh,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yes, yes.
it is not so active these days. No?
Okay.
Professor K.L. Sharma, who has established it,
Yes, yes,
has
yes, yes.
established with wonderful vision, but unfortunately, it is not so active as it ought to be in the present times. And there is one center which is established in Kerala University, Center for Philosophical Counseling, which was established only few months back, right? Except these two, there are not many organizations which are working. But but I should assert here one thing, that Delhi University Philosophy Department has introduced philosophical counseling to be one of the optional papers in master's program, and similarly many universities have come forward now. Like I understand that Chandigarh University has offered philosophical counseling as one of the optional papers. Lucknow University is offering, and Mumbai University is offering. Now, like, even academia is recognizing the importance of philosophical counseling and trying to help us with that. Yeah, with regard to your question regarding whether it is a therapy, intervention, or a technique,
Technique.
for resolving day-to-day problems, I believe some practitioners or some philosophical counselors have argued saying that it is a therapy, and some have
Okay.
tried to develop it as a intervention, and some have in fact simplified it in such a way that it becomes a technique of everyday living. So that is how, since I said it is an emerging area, people are contributing from all the perspectives that psychological counseling is already exposed to, so that they can
Yeah.
enrich philosophical counseling. That is
Definitely.
how, yeah. But India has to come out with its own perspective still, and probably we are planning to come out with a special issue of a journal on philosophical
Okay.
counseling, looking at it from various Indian perspectives. For example, Bhagavad Gita provides a particular kind of orientation towards philosophical counseling, where Arjuna Krishna addresses the anxiety of Arjuna and tries to address his concerns. Similarly, we have the conception of Sthita Prajnatva in Bhagavad Gita, which tries to give us hints or tools as to how we should look at our life, right? Similarly, we have Buddhism offering rich pool of resources for philosophical counseling in terms of stressing the momentariness of life, okay, and stressing that there is no permanent self that is existent. That is how you have to look at the world in a completely different perspective. And similarly, we have Jainism, which tells us that each one of us have a limited perspective of the reality, and none of us can have the of the reality, and that is how we should understand the limitations of our perspective and respect the perspective of others. So Jainism gives us this wonderful hint, which we can definitely develop as a that. Similarly, there are many philosophical schools in India which have rich pool of resources, which we have to tap and try to develop, enrich philosophical counseling from Indian perspective. Yeah.
Well, sir, so since we are talking about mental health and is it an intervention, I would like to say what contribution uh, in this, like, as I was talking to you about, people being affected or infected. So, what do you say about this particular topic? That right now the scenario is such that during this pandemic COVID-19 situation, what do you have this, since you're a philosopher and you have, like, you people have total different theories and bases of putting forward your perspectives. So I would like to ask you, the situation is such. How do you differentiate between solitude and isolation?
Yeah, to come to that point, yeah, how do we address the issue of the present concern? Let me explain certain things before I get into this point, okay? Human life, when we look at our own individual human life, what happens in human life is we act and react to the factual world, right?
True.
Factual world is given to us, and we act and react to the factual
That.
world. And how do we act and react to the factual world? Through our physical, psychological, which means psychophysical organism, which is also endowed with spirituality, cosmic, etc., etc. Okay, some people may not accept it, but some people think that is the fundamental one. So let us not bother about
Yes.
each differences in this regard. But
Yeah.
otherwise, each one of us definitely agree that in human life, what happens is we interact, act, and react to the factual world through our psychophysical and spiritual mechanism that we have with us, right? Now, what happened is the factual world is suspended suddenly. Okay?
Yeah.
So, what happened to us now is because of this COVID-19 pandemic, factual world is suspended for us for a time being. So, if the
Yes.
factual world is suspended, then how should we react? Okay, so this psychophysical, cosmic, or spiritual mechanism that we have, to whom should it act and react? So, what would be the other for it, right? This is the major concern. And the factual world is not just suspended. Because of the factual suspension of factual world, we are left with three realities of life. What are these three realities? Lockdown, and then social distancing, and then
Definitely.
quarantine. Okay,
Quarantine.
so yeah, quarantine. These are the three
Yeah.
realities of our factual life now, and
True.
all these three relate themselves to isolation. And that is how isolation becomes a big issue of concern to all of
Issue.
us. And if isolation is an issue of concern, we have to look at the history to understand how this isolation is developed as a concept in psychology, at least.
Yes.
Okay. And if you look at Freud, Freud doesn't say that it is something negative. Okay. He says it is a kind of what is it called? A mechanism
Kind of
that
yeah.
a mechanism that
Rejuvenate
is
or fill
required.
us. Yeah,
Yeah,
required.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is a rejuvenating kind of mechanism where you give space between two an unwanted thought and a regular kind of a
Wanted.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, wanted thought. Okay, so that is what is isolation. So you are distancing something. Okay, a
Yeah.
thought, that is how positively it is mentioned in the thing in the history. But otherwise, the problem that comes forward is in this isolation, we unfortunately or fortunately develop a kind of anxiety and fear, and which cannot be avoided, because if we
Yes.
are isolated from the factual world with which we are used to interact continuously, which we have been doing for so many years, now suddenly if that is suspended for some time, then the concern would be more in terms of fear and anxiety, and this is to be addressed. And some people try to address this fear and anxiety by trying to prepare a regular routine, strict routine, and trying to follow it with military discipline. Okay, which becomes a kind of obsessive compulsive disorder,
Oh my
but
god.
which is also not so good, right?
Yeah.
And the other way is being anarchic. You will not get up whenever you feel like you will get up, and whatever you feel like you do, and finally it becomes a kind of anarchic situation where you will not be able to bear yourself, right?
Yeah.
So the isolation is leading to these two extremes,
Different.
which are to be balanced. And how do you balance yourself? It is through alignment. You have to align yourself.
Yeah.
Even in the normal course of life, people have been telling us that we should not get carried with whatever is coming in front of us. We have to align ourselves and then move forward. What does this alignment mean? Okay. For example, we talk about car wheel alignment, right? The car's wheel alignment. So, what does it happen in the car wheel alignment? And how do you relate it to yourself? Alignment is basically placing each of the parts in relation or in consonance, in conformity with the other. The other, the part, a particular part is to be placed in relation, in conformity, in consonance with the other. That is what is this alignment means. So that's what is very important in this kind of a concept called isolation in which we are. How do we reach that alignment? That is possible only when you look at it as a solitude, as a form of solitude, because isolation is a imposed one, externally imposed one, and we know as a human being we want freedom, right? Each one of us desire freedom and we feel like living a free life. So if it is imposed externally, then we feel like we should not accept such kind of an imposition. But if you think that it is a kind of solitude, then it is a self-imposed one. And there are plenty of advantages of solitude than isolation. If you look at it as solitude, then it helps in raising your conscious awareness, and you and observing yourself where you are and what you are and what is it that you are doing. So this gives a kind of a hint into Indian as well as ancient Greek traditions. In Indian tradition, we were always said, we were always asked to have Atma Vidya. Atma Vidya doesn't mean knowing the God or something, right? It is knowing your own self. Okay, knowing your own self, and go inside. Inward journey is very important. And Socrates also says, "Know thyself." No, you know yourself. That is the beginning. No? Unless you begin there, it would be difficult to go forward. So these are the hints that we get, and that these are the things that prompt us to look at life in terms of solitude than isolation. And this solitude would help us, or should be oriented towards identifying our inner strengths. And identifying inner strengths is fine for me, but identifying the possible strengths, okay? I'm not saying you identify your strengths and your drawbacks, okay? Forget about drawbacks, but you identify your possible strengths as well, because these possible strengths are like, you do a kind of archaeology of yourself, no? You get back into your own self and see, yeah, there are certain things which you thought, okay, I can do this, but then because of whatever fastness that we have in our life, you might have left it there. So that's where, if you loved music sometime back, you go back to your possible strength, possible interest, and retrieve it so that you can have a better kind of conception of your own life in the present situation. Because all our earlier conceptions of human nature are getting corrected, if not rejected, at least getting affected, because we heard people saying that man is a social animal, and now we are asked not to be social, okay? Not to be social. This social animal, social isolation is required. That's what we are saying. Of course, technology is facilitating a different kind of relation, but again, social isolation is affecting each one of us. So that's where I think philosophical counseling and philosophy would definitely help us come to our rescue in this COVID-19 times. Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir. And proceeding ahead, I would just like to tell our viewers for sticking with us, for giving so much of love right now, listening to sir. I in any question that you have, you can always throw up your questions. You can ask here. Sir would address your questions regarding whatever sir spoke or anything which is related and we've not touched upon. You want to know some anything, you can just throw up your question. We will just discuss one more question or maybe something, and then we'll take up your question. So your questions are welcome. Even if your questions are gone ahead, I'll go back and we'll address it. So no issue. Kindly put up your questions. So we'll be addressing it. So, lastly, sir, I would ask you that since you are a philosopher and you all deal with um, what is life and how is life, and so I just want to know your idea, your perspective towards what is life and what meaning does it hold for you. I mean, uh, life is all about what, and how do we reach up to that self actualization, or that height of our true potential of extracting the best from life. So what is your mantra, or what is your idea about it?
Yeah. Right. Great. Thank you. uh, that makes me think about my own conceptions of philosophy and life.
Yeah.
So that's how. Let me talk about that as well. Yeah, I have
You
at
can
least
as
two.
well
Yeah.
share why did you take up philosophy? Yeah, like I mean,
Right.
leaving about all the other things and subjects, and you took up philosophy, and you are in love with it. That is so explicitly, I can feel that in spite of not meeting you in person, I can feel that you are so you are so in love with the subject. Since you are explaining it so passionately and deeply, that means you are in the very essence of philosophy. So what make you took up that?
Yeah, basically philosophy makes me really happy and I enjoy it. But if you ask me specifically about my philosophy of life, I take things as they come to me. So
Okay.
that is how I'm quite comfortable with whatever comes to me. And I believe that as an individual, with whatever resources that I have, I can deal with them in the best possible way. But there is something that is very important that I believe strongly. At least there are two things that I strongly believe to be true for life, which I want to share with you and other viewers that we have today now. Like, I believe that all your actions, see, we are all human beings and we act in the life in our life, right? So there is a given thing to all of us which you cannot reject or which you cannot do away with. So, if that is the situation, I believe that every action of ours either should contribute positively to enhancing our happiness or at least it should retain it. So, no action of the individual, okay, none of your actions as an individual should attempt to destroy your own happiness, present happiness, and if possible should attempt to enhance your happiness. This looks very simple and plain.
Over. It just gave me
Yeah,
an indication and it went off. So I need to connect it again. So it's totally fine, sir. So we were
yeah.
just discussing the last last question, that what according to you, and so you were telling two important things are very necessary. So we'd start from there.
Right. I was saying that each one of us are in a particular kind of situation now, and we have a certain amount of happiness as well as issues of concern, and none of our next future course of actions should that negatively affect the present state of ours. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
we have to take care of. This is a very important aspect of human life. Whether your wife and husband, mother and child, father and child, all the relational problems that we think of and all the other kind of existential problems, professional problems that we think of emanate from this concern that if you take care of this particular aspect as a touchstone at any point of time, saying that, yeah, this particular action of mine, see, since you are not answering anybody else, you are answering your own
Right.
self, so you
Yeah.
would be definitely genuine to your own self. This is what I assume. Right? Because I believe in the basic goodness of all human beings. Each one of
Yes.
us are good, definitely. Okay, so there is no doubt about it. So when once we believe in the genuine happiness, goodness of each one of us, we can be honest to our own selves, and that's where we have to be careful when we are acting in the world, like whether this act of mine is affecting negatively my present state of happiness. If it is affecting negatively, then I should not resort to such kind of an action. So this is where we have to be very careful, and this is my first theorem of philosophy of my own life. The
Yeah.
second one is very important. Whatever you were referring to in your question when you framed it, no? I believe that we are all unique, and most of the times we don't realize that we are unique. We think that we are one among many other things, and we are like this. We tend to put others into stereotypes, and also we put ourselves into stereotypes, That is how we try to lose our uniqueness. But actually, all of us are unique in our own way. And as a unique being, you there are certain things only you can do. You have to identify such kind of actions. Okay, there may be many psychologists now, right? There may be many
Yeah.
students who have done psychology, but none of them could identify this particular aspect of it. You could identify, and with this kind of a solution for the good of larger community. So there are certain such kind of unique acts that only you can do because of your own background. Okay,
Yes.
so that is how we have to identify how unique we are and what are the unique kind of actions that only we can perform, and then we should perform them. That is very important. Otherwise, doing routine things, routinely doing things is of no use. No, you're not making any difference to the world if you're going that way. But there are certain kind of unique actions that only you can do. You have to identify your uniqueness and your unique acts, and this would really help you. At the end of the day, this would give you a lot of satisfaction. I'm very sure after you initiated this endeavor, you might be definitely feeling contemptuous, right?
Yes,
You
I,
feel that happiness
I,
that you are providing such kind of a wonderful platform, right? There are many people might have done that. And also similarly, I'm saying none of the psychologists would have preferred to call a philosopher. Probably you're the only one who could do that, no? Call a
yeah.
philosopher and try to talk. So these are
Yes.
the unique kind of acts that you can do. And I'm saying to any one of us, there are certain kind of unique things that we only can do, and you
Yes.
identify and perform those acts which may be related to your family, which may be related to your society, which may be related to your profession, and you have to identify them. And these two guidelines would definitely help each one of us in making a difference in our own lives and in the lives of the others as well. This is what I believe, and this is what I think is my understanding of philosophy of life. Thank you very much for asking this, because your question has made me reflect on my own life and come out with these two theorems for me. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that. No, you have provided a reflective.
That's my pleasure, sir. Because to like all the people who are right now watching, I would love to, and it is a genuine feeling I would extend towards sir, that he is so humble enough, being the chairman and being the head of the board of directors and committees and the departments. He is humble enough to accept this invitation here, right at this platform, without even asking that you are from psychology background. Why do you want me here? And humble enough to accept everything which I called him to do. So, sir, it's your greatness which is seen. I mean, you need not to talk about anything else, because your humility makes you great. And I believe that on air I can, express that you are one of those individuals which the society is actually in need of right now, because we need people like this to build a society, to unite, and to make this particular, if we talk about India as one country, to make it larger and to expand the perspectives, we need people like you. So thank you, sir. And
Thank
let's take up the questions. So the first question we have here is, sir, according to you, what is the core problem for which all our mental and emotional problems arise, and how can philosophy and psychology together address it?
This is very interesting. No, see, can we consider human life to be only one kind of one? No, see,
Yes.
there is a rich diversity that is existent in each one of us. That's what I'm saying. Each one of us are unique in as a particular sense, and I don't think there can be one methodology or one conception that can help us to address the issues. So that is how we even in psychology, I believe we have client oriented psychology, right? The
Yeah.
methodology that we follow is client oriented
Client
and
centered therapy.
client
Yeah.
centered. Yeah, client centered. And in a similar way, even if we are looking at the way psychology and philosophy can come together, that also would be completely different. This is where actually the job of the counselor becomes very difficult. He has to be knowledgeable, and he has to have practical experience, and at the same
Yes.
time he cannot pretend to be knowing everything
Yeah.
because his
That is
knowledge is
very
always
important.
limited, because each
Yeah.
of the clients would be different from
Yes.
whom you have faced already. So that's why the life of a counselor becomes very difficult.
Very important. And
Yeah.
so the next question is, most of the fears and mental problems are due to the fear of death. So wouldn't it help to explain the help to explain the nature of death?
Yeah, in fact, these are the specific concerns of philosophy that I'm saying. See, psychology, I don't know how it can, but philosophy, if you Buddhism talks about dukkha in life, and also impermanence of life. Okay, at every point of time is impermanent. The self that you're
Yes.
talking about is impermanent. So once you get into such kind of conceptions and understand the impermanence of life in every aspect of yours, then probably the way death threatens you will be limited. So that is where philosophy can definitely help us more than any other discipline. That's what I believe, no? So yeah, definitely. I completely agree with the person who has asked this question. Yeah, thank you.
Sir, as you accept you should take input from psychology, then can you explain what tools of psychology and philosophical counseling uses and try to solve what kinds of problems?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Basically, there are a set of philosophical counselors who are closely working with psychology, positive psychology especially, and who are using cognitive behavior therapy, etc. Right? Logic-based therapy. There are a good number of philosophers, especially I believe Professor Elliot Cohen from NCPA in USA. He has
Okay.
been working in this direction. So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
are philosophers who are working closely with positive psychology and argue that that
Yes.
resolves certain philosophical problems. So yeah, there is some work that is happening in the West in this direction. Yeah.
So there's this person who's asking, can you tell the viewers about some of the philosophers who can be guiding lights for this counseling, like Socrates? So both philosophers and psychologists. For both psychologists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, most of the Western philosophical counselors are using Epicurus quite well. Epicurean philosophy seems to be fascinating many
Acha.
people, okay, who delved into what is happiness, how do you understand happiness. He is the first philosopher to get into this particular area of what is happiness and what is happy life, and many people take note of that and try to use him for philosophical counseling. And along with him, from the eastern side of the globe, people use Chinese philosophy. Okay, Lao Tzu.
Chinese.
Uh, yeah, Taoism
Yeah,
is very well
Taoism.
used. Taoism is
Yeah.
very well used in
Yeah.
philosophical counseling. And when it comes to Indian conception, Buddhism is used very well by the West in philosophical counseling. And
Yeah.
remaining philosophical schools of India are also to be explored well, so that uh, we. Is it my phone or your phone?
Some disturbance. Well, we'll go ahead with this. Sorry
Yeah,
for the disturbance, sir. It's phone and it's
no, not a problem.
technology, so
I know.
something or the other keeps happening. So yeah,
Even I
this
am
one
praying
of
that I
the
should not get a phone call during the conversation.
yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah,
yeah,
but what to do, like, in spite of informing many people, then there is somebody who's left.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
that's
one
fine.
person who's asking, sir, how would you differentiate psychology and philosophy as tools and grounds forward counseling?
No, I didn't get it.
Can you please, it's, I think,
Yep. Can you please repeat
Yamini,
it?
can you please repeat the question and can you just frame it once again? It says, how would you differentiate psychology and philosophy as tools and grounds? Forward counseling. Do you mean that the tools of psychology and philosophy, on what grounds we use, like what tools we use for counseling? Is it that question? Can you please clarify? We'll go ahead with your question. Until then, we have another question, sir. Can you please explain little the concept of reality being momentary? Because according to me, most of the problems are because we take temporary things as permanent.
Yeah, this is what Buddha tries to teach us. No, Buddha tells us
Okay.
that sarvam kshanikam, everything in the world is momentary. Unfortunately, we think that everything is permanent, and that is how we'll end up in so many problems
Troubles.
that we have in life. Yeah,
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 it's okay, sir. You can
I
take
don't
a
know.
sip.
Sometimes it,
It's
yeah,
we are learning, sir. It's technology, and it just goes one click and it just goes off. So
it helps us, and it also has its own limitation. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Everything is unique, and it has unique limitations as well, which are to be recognized.
limitations,
No,
and we need to be
yeah,
very understanding and patient with technology too.
yeah, true, true,
So yes,
very true.
Yamini says that she wants to know the difference between the psychological tools and the philosophical tools when we talk about counseling.
Yeah, as I was referring to,
Yeah.
for example, in philosophical counseling, you may be using Socratic dialogue to be one of the tools, okay, which
Yeah.
may not be useful in psychological counseling properly.
Yes.
So that is though
Yes.
that I can explain that to be one of the differentiating aspects which we call philosophical midwifery in philosophical
Yeah.
counseling, where you help the other
Okay.
to arrive at some conclusion regarding which the client has a confusion, right? So
Yeah.
that's a kind of unique methodology for or tool for philosophical counseling. And psychological counseling tools, there are many. No, there are many
There
methodologies
are
that have
many.
come up in Gestalt
Yeah.
and
And now
Rosarian method.
every time.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
lot of
the
them.
logocentric one. Yeah, there are many. So
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
uh, even if you Google, you would find many tools for psychology. But for if you are looking
Yeah.
at philosophical tools, then these are being like continuously
Yeah.
emerging. So we have to
Yeah, so we do
read
have, like
them.
in psychology, we have different schools of psychology, as well as we have tools like questionnaires and interview techniques and assessment tools and surveys and observation tools. So there are many.
Yeah.
Going forward, so one of our viewer wants to ask, quite a few of our dilemmas are related to decision making on an individual level by being part of a family or a society. In such a situation, how shall one try to approach those problems?
Yeah, this is where, in fact, philosophical counseling would be very much useful. Okay, if the dilemma
Okay.
is ethical, then it would
Yeah.
help you in understanding. See, basically, we will have at least three or four varieties of beliefs. Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes we have irrational beliefs which we don't identify, okay,
Yeah.
and sometimes undetermined beliefs, okay. The factuality would be something, and you will have a different kind of belief which you go with, okay. And
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you will also have certain kind of beliefs which are contradictory beliefs, okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about yourself, you would accept it, but when it comes to actual situation, you will think, you will talk in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So that is
It
where
does happen.
philosophical counseling would be useful in decision making that you are talking about, whether it is at the family level or at the professional level
Yeah.
or at the societal level. And that's how it would be very useful. So how do you address this kind of irrational beliefs, undetermined beliefs, contradictory beliefs, and false beliefs? Sometimes
Okay.
we'll carry certain false beliefs even. So if you
Yes.
can be reflective on them and see whether it's not that you're accepting it for yourself and you're not accepting it for others, right? And also your basic propositions, like when I said in the beginning, like each one of us have a worldview, a belief system, and our actions are dependent on our belief system, which largely influences in our social movement and personal movement as well. Probably some of our belief systems are not well grounded, so that you would know only when you try to articulate your problem. So
Yeah,
if the problem is in your mind and if you're thinking about it constantly, you will not be able to come out with a proper solution to that.
solution.
But once you articulate it, in the process of articulation, many things, so many clear to the individual. And that is how we say you talk. Sometimes I even suggest to some of my students that you stand in front of the mirror
Mirror.
and talk to yourself. Okay, when
Yeah, we
you
do have a
articulate
word we
it,
call this.
uh,
Yeah.
I took it from there only. So I'm saying once you articulate it, certain confusions that are there in the mind would get cleared, and that
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
is the beginning of self-reflectivity, right?
Yes.
So this is very much required.
Well,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
thank you to all our viewers who had those questions and took up this platform to address your queries. And thank you so much, sir, uh, to address all the questions our viewers had. And I would really like to appreciate your presence here, being with us here. I told you about 1 hour, but it's more than an hour, and we didn't even come to know. You speak so beautifully, and it's so nice and beautiful to listen to your insights and the way you look at life. There is so much to learn from you. So, with that note, that if in case I feel
Um,
that I need to call you again, I hope that you are ready to be here with our viewers.
yes,
And
definitely.
yes, sir, you were
Yeah.
telling me something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shiba, for this wonderful invitation. I really enjoyed being here and talking to you and talking to the viewers. And thank you, all the viewers, for interesting questions that you
Yeah.
have posed. In fact, they have helped me in reflecting further on how should I talk in future platforms on philosophical counseling. That is how you have helped me a lot.
Well,
And it really helped me talking to you, Shiba, in articulating whatever. As I said, articulation gives me more clarity. You have
clarity.
given me an opportunity to articulate what I should talk about philosophical counseling. Thank you so much for that. And
Thank you, sir.
yeah,
It's a
I would
pleasure.
really look forward to future possibilities. But as of now, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. God bless you and take care of yourself. Thank you to all the viewers who were there with us, who encouraged others to be here with us. And keep in touch. Keep updated yourself and keep updating yourself. Be aware of what's happening around, and whatever sessions you're learning or whatever. Things we are talking about here, kindly try and implement something, someone, one particular basic thing that you get from here. That would be the success of these sessions which I'm trying to do. So thank you to all, and thank you so much, sir, once again, for having spare your time and being with us. So God bless us all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.